Chapter 6, Lesson 2 talks about reflections. So far this chapter we're talking about transformations. In Lesson 1 we talked about translations, which are sliding, right? You slid them up, down, left, right. So when we talk about reflections, the more common term would be a flip. So you would take this top triangle and flip it down. Flip it down, like this is your mirror. A reflection talks about mirrors, so it would be the mirror image. And you know, sometimes if you've ever looked in the rearview mirror of a car, you ever notice why ambulance is spelled backwards on the front of an ambulance? It's because whenever you look in the rearview mirror, it's spelled correctly, left to right. So that's what a reflection does. It kind of, reflects. It reverses things. So could be reflected over the x-axis. So in other words, the x is the mirror that you are taking this and reflecting it down. Or it could be that the y-axis is the mirror. It talks about the line of reflection. So if the y-axis is the line of reflection, you're taking this and flipping it over the y. So one thing I want to make sure to point out to you, if you're flipping it over the x values do not change, right? X values, those are both still -4. This one, the x values are still -2. The only thing that changes is the y value, even for this point right here. X value is -4, x value is -4. All right, the only thing that's changing here are the y values. So if you look, it was a 4, it's now a -4. It was a 1, it's now a -1. It was a 1, it's now a -1. So they are just the opposites. So in order to switch something over the x-axis, you multiply the y's by -1. So in other words, you change the sign of the y's. The x's stay the same, y's have to change sign. In order to reflect it over the y, then that means the y's stay the same, right? It doesn't move up or down any. The y's stay the same, only the x's are different. So they were both a +1 for the y, but notice that the x here is a -2 and it went to a +2. X was a -4, it went to a +4. X is a -4, went to a +4. So those are what change. The x's change. Okay, so they are kind of pairs that go opposite. If you're reflecting it over the x, the y values change. If you're reflecting it over the y, the x values change. And again, that makes sense because if you reflect it over the x's aren't changing, right? If it's still 1, 2 units away from the y-axis, it's still going to be 1, 2 units away. So the x didn't change. It only changed it up and down. Okay, so let's try that with a few. Example 1, triangle ABC has vertices 5, 2, 1, 3, -1, 1. Graph the figure and its reflected image over the x-axis, then find the coordinates of the vertices of the reflected image. So first, plot A, B, and C that they gave you, 5, 2, 1, 3, and -1, 1. And then if you're going to reflect it over the x, then that means which one of them changes. If you reflect over the x, then that means the y's have to change. Notice that the b's, right, point B, should still all be in the same line because we're reflecting it over the x. So these should not move. It should not move left or right. You're reflecting it over the x. You're just taking the up and down and changing it. So if the y used to be a 1, it's now going to be a -1. That's C prime. B, x is not going to change. Y is the opposite. That's B prime. A prime, x is not going to change. Y would change. Okay, so A would be 5, -2. B would be 1, -3. C prime would be -1, -1. Okay, and that's what we've got right here. All right. Moving on, my dearies, moving on. Quadrilateral KLMN has vertices 2, 3, 5, 1, 4, -2, and 1, -1. Graph the figure, right here, graph the figure, and its reflection over the y. Now, if it's a reflection over the y, then that means it's the x's that change. X's that change. You're reflecting it over the y. So y values are going to stay the same. They're all going to still stay on that line. Notice the m's did not move up or down any. L's did not move up or down any. All right? They just reflected over that line of reflection right there. So if you're reflecting over the y's, the x values change. So k prime would be -2, 3. L prime, -5, 1. M prime, -4, -2. And the last one, N prime. X values change, -1, -1. And that's what I got right here. -2, 3, -5, 1, -4, -2, and -1, -1. Remember, whenever you are graphing the reflected image, remember whenever I talk about K prime, N prime, M prime, and L prime, we do not need two K's up here. We need to know which one was the original and then which one moved. So make sure that you do both. Okay. Now, I've taught you just to switch, right? Just to take the opposite of. If you are fine with graphing it and maybe you're just a good visual person and you just want to reflect it on your own, that is fine too. That is an option, okay? So go ahead and try A. On A, triangle PQR has vertices P, 1, 5, Q, 3, 7, and R, 4, -1. Graph the figure, which you would have to do, and reflect it over the Y. So I'm just going to give you the coordinates of the new points. If you reflect it over the y, then that means the x's change. So P prime, -1, 5. Q, come on, Q prime, -3, 7. And R prime, -4, -1. Make sure you are putting the primes with those. Okay, example 3, the figure below is reflected over the y-axis. Now, don't just think of this as like a half a frog. Surely, like, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 4th, 5th grade, when you talk about symmetry, you say that this would be the line of symmetry, the y-axis, and you complete the drawing just by making it the same kind of, that's exactly what you're doing. You are doing a reflection. Barring any crazy natural birth defects there, whatever the frog looks like on the right-hand side, it's going to look on the left-hand side. So, then sketch the figure and its image on the coordinate plane. So what I want you to do is find the coordinates of point A prime and point B prime. So if it's reflected over the y, then that means the x has changed. So if it was +1 here, it's going to be -1 here. B prime, if it was 2, x is 2, since you're flipping over the 1, the x changes from 2 to -2. That's what we got. We just flipped the sign. Easy enough, right? So now we've got a sun. The figure at the right is reflected over the x. So it's try that again. If it's reflected over the x, then that means it's the y values that change. So the y value here is a +2, so it's going to go down here to a -2. This y value is a +2, it will go down here to a -2. So whenever we're talking about this, we are talking about the y values that are changing because it's the x-axis. So the new point A prime, right here. B prime, right here. Okay, you don't have to worry about sketching the sun all the way out there. Just as long as you know those reflected pieces, that is fine for me. Okay, now with that, you should be good to go on the guided practice. Remember, and for your notebook, here's what I want you to remember. If it is reflected over the y, then it's the x's that change. You have to multiply it by -1. If it is being reflected over the x, then you have to multiply the y values times -1, which basically just flips all of those. And that is a reflection. That is a reflection. Okay? So any questions with that? Let me know tomorrow. Other than that, good luck.